आज
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Dr. Namra, and today's topic of SDD is bones and joints. Students, the topic of Paget's disease has not been covered in your lectures, so we'll go through it in SDD. So Paget disease of bone is also called osteitis deformans. It is the disorder of increased but disordered and structurally unsound bone mass. So remember these words: disordered and structurally unsound bone. Remember, disordered and structurally unsound bone. So this is a condition of abnormal bone remodeling. This is the imbalance between osteoclast and osteoblast function. What are osteoclasts? Osteoclasts are those cells which form bone, which destroys the bone, and osteoblasts are the cells which forms the bones. Usually, it begins at late adulthood, around 70 years of age. So the etiology is unknown. Viral infection is suspected. So the cause is thought to be slow virus infection, that is paramyxovirus or respiratory syncytial virus. So pathophysiology: increased osteoclastic bone resorption is the primary cellular abnormality. Osteoclasts are those cells which break the bone. Osteoblasts which form the bone. So osteoclastic activity, that means the bone resorption is increased, the bone breakage is increased. It is the primary cellular abnormality. So it involves 3 stages. You can also be asked what is the classification of Paget's disease. So these stages can also be called classification. Okay? It involves 3 stages. Stage number 1, osteoclastic or osteolytic stage, in which the bone is broken down, as the name indicates, osteoclastic activity. So stage 2 is mixed stage. It is osteoblastic and osteoclastic stage. In this stage, there is balance between osteoblasts and osteoclasts. So osteoblastic and osteoclastic stage, which ends with predominance of osteoblastic activity. So this stage ends with the predominance of bone forming activity, that is osteoblastic activity. And stage number 3, this is the burnt out quiescent stage, which is also called osteosclerotic stage or sclerotic stage, resulting in a thick sclerotic bone that fractures easily. So what are the 3 stages? Stage number 1, osteoclastic stage. Stage number 2, mixed stage, also called osteoblastic osteoclastic stage. And stage number 3, osteosclerotic stage. So the net effect of this process is a gain in bone mass. Remember, the net effect is gain in bone mass. So how the patient presents with Paget's disease? So frequently the patients are asymptomatic, and this is an incidental finding. So some patients present with bone pain due to microfractures, or there may be long bone bowing, as you can see in this picture. The patient has bowed legs, fractures due to brittle bone and tend to be transverse. As you can see, the femur has transverse fracture. The fractures due to brittle bone and tend to be transverse. Although there is gain in bone mass, but the bones are brittle. They are easy to get fractured. So some sites of involvement, the common sites that gets involved in Paget's disease, the most common is femur, then pelvis, then tibia, skull, and spine. So the patient presents like line-like face due to involvement of craniofacial bones. Patient says to the visiting doctor or the consultant that I cannot, the hat which I used to wear does not fit me now. So the patient cannot fit hat on. Patient has line-like face. As you can see in these pictures, the patient has specific facial features, just like a lion. The skull is like this. So the hearing loss due to impairment on cranial nerves. It is also associated with high output cardiac failure because due to formation of AV shunts in bone and osteosarcomas. Remember, Paget's disease patients can lead to osteosarcomas. So how the patient is diagnosed in lab? Lab diagnosis: isolated elevated alkaline phosphatase osteoblasts laying down bone create an alkaline environment to mineralize osteoid. So the alkaline phosphatase levels are raised, but the calcium and phosphorus levels are normal. Why this is linked? Because in the diseases or in the abnormalities of parathyroid hormone, the calcium and phosphorus levels may either be high or low. So this patient is discriminated from parathyroid hormone disease on the basis of calcium and phosphorus levels. The calcium and phosphorus levels in Paget's disease are normal. On microscopy, the three stages are different. Whenever you are asked in examination about the microscopy of Paget's disease, you should describe the three stages separately. So the number one, lytic stage or the osteoclastic stage. The waves of osteoclastic activity and numerous resorption pits. Osteoclasts are abnormally large with 10 to 12 nuclei. This is osteoclast, and you can see the 10 to 12 nuclei, another osteoclast. In mixed phase, osteoclasts persist in the mixed phase, but now many of the bone surfaces are lined by prominent osteoblasts. We have already discussed that at the end of mixed phase or osteoblastic stage, there are prominent at the end of this stage, there is prominent osteoblastic activity. In sclerotic phase, this is the third stage. In sclerotic phase, this is the hallmark, and there is a mosaic pattern of laminar bone seen in the sclerotic phase. There is a jigsaw puzzle-like appearance, as you can see in this microscopic picture. That this is mosaic pattern. This is mosaic pattern. Follow my cursor. This is mosaic pattern. So this is jigsaw puzzle-like appearance is produced by usually prominent cement lines which join haphazardly oriented units of laminar bone. This is an important question that can be asked in Viva or in examination. The question can be asked like, what are the tumor and tumor-like lesions associated with Paget's disease? So the benign lesions that are associated with Paget's disease are giant cell tumor, giant cell reparative granuloma, extraosseous masses of hematopoietic tissue. And the malignant conditions that are associated with Paget's disease are sarcomas, and the sarcomas are usually osteosarcomas and fibrosarcomas. So question, 60 years old man complains of pain in his leg. The visiting orthopedic surgeon who noticed enlargement of his craniofacial skeleton, the enlargement of craniofacial skeleton or the line-like face. A patient has difficulty in holding his head straight. Surgeon advised X-ray of the femur, and the X-ray revealed chalk stick fracture. So we should look for the clues in this question. Clue number one. He is a 60 years old man, 60 years old, an adult, an old age man. He complains of pain in his leg. So the orthopedic surgeon noticed enlargement of craniofacial skeleton, as we have already studied that the patients have typical line-like face. Patient has difficulty in holding his head straight. So why the patient has difficulty in holding his head straight? Because there may be involvement of cervical spine. So the involvement of cervical spine leads to the patient with difficulty in holding his head. So the surgeon advised X-ray, and the X-ray revealed chalk stick fracture. These are also characteristic fractures that can be seen in Paget's disease. So what is the most probable diagnosis? The most probable diagnosis is Paget's disease. Give the microscopic features of this lesion, as I have already told you that whenever microscopic features of Paget's disease are asked, you should describe the three stages separately. So we'll discuss again. In the lytic phase, waves of osteoclastic activity and numerous resorption pits are seen, and osteoclasts are abnormally large Remember, osteoclasts are abnormally large with 10 to 12 nuclei. The second stage is mixed phase. In this mixed phase, both osteoclast and osteoblastic activity is seen, but most osteoblastic activity is more prominent. That is, the bone forming activity is more prominent. Number 3 is the sclerotic phase. In sclerotic phase, there is mosaic pattern of laminar bone. In the sclerotic phase, jigsaw puzzle-like appearance. So this is all microscopic features. Enumerate the tumor and tumor-like lesions. We have already discussed. These are the tumor and tumor-like lesions associated with Paget's disease. Benign lesions include giant cell tumor, giant cell reparative granuloma, extraosseous masses of hematopoietic tissue, and the malignant conditions include sarcoma, and the sarcomas are usually osteosarcomas and fibrosarcomas of long bones, pelvis, skull, and spine. So osteomyelitis. What is osteomyelitis? Infection of the bone is called osteitis. And the infection of bone marrow space is called myelitis. So the word becomes osteomyelitis. Osteo from bone, infection of the bone, and myelitis from the bone marrow space. So osteomyelitis. Osteomyelitis is inflammation of bone. It is usually pyogenic, fungal, or tubercular. It may remain localized or it may spread through the bone to involve the marrow, cortex, periosteum, and soft tissue surrounding the bone. So in short, osteomyelitis is the infection that can involve any surrounding structure. So it can involve the marrow, cortex of the bone, periosteum that is surrounding the bone, or the soft tissue that is around the bone. So what is the classification of osteomyelitis? It is based on duration of symptoms. It can be classified on the basis of duration of symptoms or on the basis of mechanism of infection. When it is classified on the basis of duration of symptoms, it can be classified as acute, subacute, and chronic. In acute osteomyelitis, the disease process, when it is limited to less than 2 weeks, it is called acute osteomyelitis. When it is limited from 2 to 6 weeks, it is called subacute osteomyelitis, and it becomes chronic when the disease process progress for more than 6 weeks. So the classification, which is based on mechanism of infection, there can be 2 mechanisms. The number 1 mechanism is hematogenous. Hematogenous spread is through the blood. The bone infection, bone is infected through the infected blood, or we can say from bacteremia, or bone is infected through exogenous source. How the bone can be infected from exogenous? From open fractures, from surgeries, from contagious spread from infected local tissues, the bone can be infected. So the causative organism, because this is an important question that can be asked. What are the causative organisms which can cause osteomyelitis? So the Staphylococcus aureus is the main leading organism that can cause osteomyelitis. It is also the part of normal flora of skin. It penetrates through it and cause osteomyelitis. Staphylococcus aureus. Other organisms that can cause are Streptococcus, Pseudomonas, and Haemophilus influenzae. Pseudomonas aeruginosa are mostly seen in IV drug abusers. Salmonella infection is mostly seen in patients with sickle cell anemia. This is an important MCQ question as well, that Salmonella is seen in sickle cell anemia patients. Mycetomal infections in caused by actinomycosis, and parasitic infections caused by Echinococcus. And other organisms that can cause osteomyelitis are TB osteomyelitis, syphilitic osteomyelitis, and typhoid osteomyelitis. Development of osteomyelitis, how osteomyelitis develops. So as you can see, when the bone is seeded with a small abscess, there is initially a small focus of infection localized to the cortical region. It progresses, the infection progresses, and it pushes the periosteal space and lifts the periosteum, as you can see in this B picture. The periosteum is elevated by the underlying infection or the abscess, and when the abscess becomes so large, it drains through a sinus tract, and these sinus tracts can also be formed through the skin, and the pus can be discharged outside. So the pus escapes through the sinus tracts. Remember two terminologies in osteomyelitis. Number one is sequestrum. Number two is involucrum. What is sequestrum? This is sequestrum. Sequestrum is the avascular necrotic region. The necrotic region is called sequestrum, and involucrum, we'll discuss it later. The clinical types of pyogenic osteomyelitis: acute osteomyelitis, it can be chronic osteomyelitis, it can be primary subacute osteomyelitis, or the acute flare-up of chronic osteomyelitis. So this is important. You have to memorize this chart. The acute pyogenic osteomyelitis, the etiological agents of acute pyogenic osteomyelitis. Whenever there is an infant less than 1 year of age, the most common, the organisms that are in red color, you can see this, these are the most common organisms that cause osteomyelitis in this age group. So the infants of less than 1 year of age, the most common cause is group B streptococcus, then Staph aureus, and then on third it's E. coli. The patients of 1 to 16 years, Staphylococcus aureus is the most common causative agent, then Streptococcus pyogenes, and then Haemophilus influenzae. In patients older than 16 years, you can see Staph aureus is the most common, then Streptococcus epidermidis and gram-negative bacteria. So you have to memorize this chart. This is important. Chronic osteomyelitis. What is chronic osteomyelitis? As I have already told you, that chronic infection is that is for more than 6 weeks. So it is nearly always a sequel to acute osteomyelitis. Whenever there is acute osteomyelitis, it can progress to chronic osteomyelitis, and if the infection can be more than 6 weeks, it becomes chronic. So chronic osteomyelitis is the sequel to acute osteomyelitis, generally secondary to open fractures, bacteremia, that is hematogenous spread, and a contagious soft tissue infection. So the causes include Staphylococcus is the usual causative organism, but Streptococci, Pneumococci, typhoid bacilli, and other bacteria may also be responsible. So this is the pathogenesis. As you know, that bones are supplied by nutrient arteries, and these nutrient arteries are the end arteries. So whenever these end arteries or nutrient arteries get inflamed, there is acute inflammatory response due to infection in the bone. That is, this is infection. This causes acute inflammation in the surrounding area, and there is acute inflammatory response due to infection. There is tissue necrosis and breakdown of bone, which leads to obstruction, and this obstruction to these small vessels can lead to avascular necrosis of the bone and the sequestra formation. What is sequestra? Sequestra is the necrotic bone, avascular necrotic bone, and sequestra formation leads to chronic osteomyelitis. What are the histological features? Remember, whenever there is acute inflammation, you can always see neutrophilic infiltrate. Whenever there is chronic inflammation, along with neutrophils, you will see lymphocytes and plasma cells. So the inflammatory cells are chiefly neutrophils in case of acute inflammation, and show lymphocytes and plasma cells in case of chronic inflammation. Osteoblasts bordering the bony trabeculae are destroyed. Osteoblasts, that are the bone forming cells, are destroyed. Sequestra is the fragmentation of fragment of dead bone or the necrotic bone. Remember these two words, sequestra and involucrum. In the osteomyelitis, whenever you are asked histological features, you should write these two features. Sequestra is the necrotic bone. They are commonly present within cavities in the bone. So whenever there is disease, after the first week of the chronic inflammatory cells release cytokines that stimulate osteoclastic bone resorption, in growth of fibrous tissue and the deposition of new bone at periphery. So the newly deposited bone can form a shell of living tissue known as involucrum. Beta, from center the bone is necrosed, and there is a response in which new bone is formed around this necrotic structure. So the newly deposited bone forms a shell. This bone is called, newly formed bone is called involucrum. There is a beautiful picture in your Robbins. You can relate it with these histological features. So summary. Whenever there is entry of microbe into the bone, there is inflammation which leads to increased vascularity of the bone and edema. So after 2 to 3 days, there is thrombosis, which leads to ischemia with bone necrosis, and bone abscess is formed. Bone abscess can lead to sequestrum, that is necrotic bone, and the secondary response involucrum. Involucrum is the formation of new bone, and this leads to chronic osteomyelitis. Question: a 6-year-old child complains of pain in his lower leg and also has high-grade fever, malaise, and chills. The pain is marked and throbbing. On X-ray, a lytic focus is seen in tibia surrounded by sclerosis. So what are the clues? A young child, 6-year-old child, complains of pain in his lower leg. He has fever, malaise, and chills, which shows that there is an acute inflammation going on. The pain is marked and throbbing. He has a severe pain. X-ray shows lytic focus in tibia surrounded by sclerosis. So what is your diagnosis? This is osteomyelitis. Name the microorganisms which can lead to this condition. These are the microorganisms that can lead to this condition. Infants less than 1 year of age, these are the organisms. 1 to 16 years of age, these are the organisms. And less than 16 years of age, these are the organisms. So in the scenario, you have been asked that he is a 6 years old child. So the most common organism in 6 years old child is Staph aureus, then Streptococcus pyogenes, and Haemophilus influenzae. So give microscopic features of this lesion. We have already discussed these microscopic features in which the inflammatory cells like neutrophils, lymphocytes, plasma cells are seen, osteoblasts are destroyed, sequestra formation, and then involucrum formation. These 4 things you have to memorize. Rheumatoid arthritis. Beta, you know rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease. It is a complex condition that is well characterized by chronic inflammation in the synovial membrane of affected joints, often with systemic manifestations. Remember, rheumatoid arthritis patients show systemic manifestations. Another organ is always involved. So the majority of the patients also have deterioration of cartilage and bone in the affected joints, which may eventually lead to permanent disability. So rheumatoid arthritis is the chronic inflammation in the synovial membrane. Remember this word. What are the lab investigations? On CBC, you can see there is high TLC and low hemoglobin. Why low hemoglobin? Because the patient might suffer from anemia of chronic diseases. There is elevated ESR, elevated C-reactive proteins. These are C-reactive proteins are elevated ESR due to inflammation, constant inflammation. Positive rheumatoid factor titers, most commonly IgM, and targets the FC portion of IgG, elevated in 75 to 80% of patients with rheumatoid arthritis. Remember, rheumatoid RF factor is elevated in 75 to 80% of patients. Patients with high titers or rheumatoid arthritis, there is generally poor prognosis and more extra-articular manifestations. So anti-CCP antibodies. What is CCP? Cyclic citrullinated peptide. These are also another antibodies. So they may also be anti-CCP antibody, high anti-CCP antibody levels. This test is sensitive and specific test for rheumatoid arthritis. What is the morphology? On gross, how the joints look like. Joints have edematous, thick, hyperplastic synovium covered by delicate and bulbous fronds. So in this picture, you can see this synovial membrane is, this red shows the inflamed synovial membrane. So the synovial membrane is inflamed. There is pannus formation. What is pannus formation? Pannus is the accumulation of T lymphocytes, macrophages, fibroblasts, plasma cells, endothelium, dendritic cells. These all form pannus. So this pannus formation and the synovial fluid is also reduced in these patients. So joints have edematous, thick, hyperplastic synovium. This synovium becomes thick and hyperplastic, covered by delicate and bulbous fronds. Osteophytes and new bone formation are not prominent. Remember, beta, osteophyte activity is seen in osteoarthritis patients, and whenever there is no osteophyte activity, remember this is rheumatoid arthritis. This is another picture in which you can see there is inflamed joint capsule, inflamed synovium. This red is synovium. This is also inflamed. Reduction of synovial fluid, destruction of this articular cartilage. You can see this is destroyed from here and from here, and damage to the bone. Damage to the bone. On microscopy, there is dense perivascular inflammatory infiltrate of T lymphocytes, plasma cells, macrophages. Remember, where does these cells come from? They come from the vessels. They leak from the vessels into the synovial fluid. So, where do you expect the most clumps of these cells? You can see around the perivascular space. So, the dense perivascular, the vessel is they have to come out from vessels, so the dense perivascular inflammatory infiltrate, which includes all the cells, lymphocytes, plasma cells, macrophages, they all are found there. Inflammation extends to subchondral bone. Proliferative synovitis with synovial cells hyperplasia and hypertrophy, as we have already discussed. This synovial membrane get hyperplastic and synovial cell hyperplasia. Lymphoplasmacytic infiltrate with variable germinal centers, necrobiotic nodules, and fibrosis. So eventually, when there is so much perivascular inflammation, inflammatory infiltrate of all these cells, there is eventually lymphoplasmacytic infiltrate with variable germinal centers. These germinal centers are formed inside the joint, and the necrobiotic nodules and fibrosis. So what does fibrosis leads to? Fibrosis leads to the formation of the joint ankylosis, or the fusion of the joints. Erosion, osteoporosis, and the pannus formation. What is pannus? Pannus is the synovial stroma, inflammatory cells, granulomatous tissue, and fibroblasts. Remember, you can be asked about the pannus. What is pannus? So, progressing to fibrous ankylosis, these patients always progress to the bridging of the joints, or the ankylosis, or the fused joints, then ossifying to form bone ankylosis. So you have to remember 4 things in this microscopy. Number 1, dense perivascular inflammatory infiltrate, and all these cells, you have to write all the names of all these cells. Dense perivascular inflammatory infiltrate. Number 2, the proliferative synovitis, and in which you will write that there is hypertrophy and hyperplasia of the synovial cells. And on number 3, you should remember lymphoplasmacytic infiltrate with variable germinal centers. And number 4, the pannus formation, and eventually the erosion of the cartilage and bone. Osteosarcoma, as the name indicates, this is the malignant tumor of bone. Sarcoma, tumor, malignant neoplasm. Osteo means bone. Osteosarcoma is the malignant tumor in which the abnormal bone is produced by tumor cells. The abnormal bone is produced itself by the tumor cells. So osteosarcoma is the second most common malignant skeletal neoplasm. The most common is myeloma. Remember, on number 1, it's myeloma. On number 2, it's osteosarcoma. So males are more predominant. Younger patients are more commonly involved, less than 20 years of age, and it arises in metaphyseal regions of long bones. Almost 50% occurs around the knee. The tumor breaks through the cortex and lifts the periosteum. Beta, remember this thing. The tumor breaks through the cortex and lifts the periosteum, resulting in reactive periosteal bone formation. And this can be seen on radiograph. The triangular shadow between the cortex and raised end of periosteum is known as Codman's triangle on X-ray. So this is the Codman triangle. As you can see, this is a triangle, Codman triangle. And how it is formed? It is formed by the breakage of the, as the tumor breaks through the cortex and lifts the periosteum. So this triangle is formed, and it is called Codman's triangle on X-ray. So how this tumor can be seen grossly. Osteosarcomas are bulky tumors. They have gritty, gray-white appearance and contains areas of hemorrhage and cystic degeneration. Tumors destroy the surrounding cortices and produce soft tissue masses. On microscopy, highly pleomorphic cells with hyperchromatic nuclei and prominent nucleoli are seen. Numerous mitosis is seen. These are the features of neoplastic neoplasm, as we already know. Tumor cells from woven bone, which is neoplastic, deposited as disorganized trabeculae around tumor cells in a lace-like pattern called osteoid. Beta, you can see this is osteoid. This is formed around the bone. In this picture, you can see the abnormal mitosis. This is abnormal mitosis. Bizarre hyperchromatic nuclei. And areas of hemorrhage and necrosis can also be seen in these tumors. So this is a beautiful picture which you draw with H&E pencils in your notebooks. So in this picture, you can see these dark colored nuclei. These are the tumor cells with hyperchromatic nuclei, pleomorphic. These are pleomorphic cells with increased mitotic activity. You can also see this osteoid formation around the tumor cells. Sorry, this is osteoid. This is osteoid. Osteoid formation around the tumor cell. This pink lacy material is osteoid. This is necrotic area inside the tumor, and this is hemorrhagic area. So, beta, this is your assignment. You have to note it down in your practical copies, and please complete your notebooks. Allah bless you. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.
हाँ जी ठीक है।